fire, man.
Yeah, ready here.
Awesome. Right, hello everyone, and welcome to the Shootout Podcast. I'm your host, Ross Baxter, and today is episode 29 of the series. Today's guest is amazing lighting artist and environment artist. He's personally one of my favourite artists. He's worked on games such as Assassin's Creed, The Division, and so many more titles. We've got Ognyan on the show. How you doing, man?
Yeah, great. Thanks for having me, man.
Thank you so much. Important question, did I pronounce your name right?
Yeah, actually, yeah, I heard that on the last podcast, and
Awesome.
it was like almost perfect.
'Cause
I know that a lot of people struggle with the pronunciation, but actually most people call me Ogi anyway. So
Alright, okay, we'll go
Yeah.
with that. Awesome.
yeah,
No,
yeah, I won't torture you for the rest of the podcast.
Phew, no more pressure.
Yeah,
It's always the hard part when it comes to every time I bring on new guests, because obviously everyone's from different backgrounds and stuff. I'm always like, please let me pronounce their name right.
yeah, I can imagine. It's actually an interesting meaning behind it. It actually means like made of fire.
Oh
So
really? All
it's
right.
yeah, it's kind of a badass name, but it's
That's
hard
epic.
to pronounce. Yeah.
I'm gonna change my name to your name. My name's just like,
Yeah.
I don't even know what my name means. It's just simple. I'm sure my dad was like, right, what is the most easiest name to give a son? And I was like, he must have been like Ross, 4 letters, straight to the point.
Still a cool name.
Thank you very much. No, but thank you so much for coming on. I'm really looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, it's my pleasure, man. Like I said, I've been hooked on the podcast before I got the invitation, and I'm really happy that it's been gaining traction because I think you're really doing important work.
Thanks, man. It really means a lot. Like I said, I've been having a blast making these videos, and this week's going to be a crazy week. I've got like so many podcasts going on. I'm losing track of all these different people, but I'm having so much fun doing it.
Awesome, man. I saw you tweeting about it. Said something like 4 or 5 guests. It's crazy.
Oh, it's the biggest mistake I think all artists make, but is like, I'm not sure. I'm pretty sure you've been a culprit of this in your artwork. But do you know when you just take on too much work? And
Oh, yeah,
and you're
yeah.
just like, oh my gosh, so much stuff hitting me at once.
Well, yeah, it's pretty common. You just give in to all the excitement and
Yeah.
you sort of forget to plan it, but I'm sure it will work out.
Definitely. But yeah, as always, everyone on the Shootout Podcast, my main focus obviously is bringing on a range of different guests from all different backgrounds, etc. And today, like I said earlier, we've got a really great guest for you, and there's going to be so much different things we can talk about. If you're new to the Shootout Podcast, I bring on a range of different guests, from concept artists to environment artists to animators as well. You name it, the podcast pretty much covers it. The Shootout Podcast is live on 9 other platforms alongside YouTube. So if you want to listen in on your way to work, etc., or wherever you are, check it out. The podcast is live on Anchor, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Breaker, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, and last but not least, we've got Stitcher. If you're new, don't forget to subscribe, leave a like if you enjoyed today's video, and make sure to select the notification bell if you want to be notified every week for all new videos. So as always on the podcast, I always like to give artists, no matter what your level is, a shout out, because there's so many great artists and talent out there that I think deserve to get their work noticed. So we've got 3 shout outs today. Right, similar to Ognyan, I really apologise if I butcher some of these names. So the first shout out is Eliza Sainez. I hope I've pronounced that right. And she's a character modeler and facial rigger. So I came across Eliza's work actually this week, and she's actually been selected for the draft selection for the Rookies Award, and she's got a really great demo reel for rigging, etc. So I highly recommend you to check out her work. You'll see her work on the screen right now, and I'll make sure to include her links and so forth in the description below. The next shout out is Amanpreet Bawa. Sorry, once again, hopefully I've pronounced it right. So I've actually had the pleasure to talk to this incredible environment artist over the last week. He's out in India, and we've been talking about just environment art in general. And his main specialty is actual like vegetation art when it comes to environment design. And once again, you'll see his artwork right now. But last but not least, I've actually got a shout out for a good friend of mine. His name is Ben Adams, and Ben is a content creator as well on YouTube, where he does a lot of range of content covering games. So if you want to go check out his work and subscribe to see more of his fresh content, just see it in the description below. But with all that said, let's just get straight into the podcast, man.
Awesome.
The main guy, here we go. Thanks for coming on once again.
Yeah, no worries. It's my pleasure, really.
So, as always, man, just start off with like the basics. So just tell us a wee bit about yourself, what do you do, etc., and that'll be cool.
Sure. Well, I'm from Bulgaria. I started my education here, but back then there wasn't any game arts programs.
Okay.
So I had to sort of compromise, and I studied computer science at uni. But what was good about that is that they had a lot of multimedia and 3D classes. So,
oh, right, okay.
Yeah, I just chose those. But I pretty much figured out that it won't be enough. So after working some time in a small indie studio, I moved to England for a while, and I studied at Escape Studios in London.
Awesome.
I don't know if you've heard about them.
Oh, trust me, when I saw that, because I always do research before the podcast, and when I saw you did Escape Studios, that's so cool.
Yeah, well, they're pretty similar in terms of format to Gnome School and other academies like that. And after that, they got me a couple of gigs, like freelance gigs, that they were pretty short. And then I got a job at Codemasters in the UK.
Awesome.
And I think I spent there about 3.5 years as an environment artist.
So, like, how long have you been doing 3D for?
Maybe around 13, 14 years, maybe
awesome.
even longer.
Yeah.
And yeah, after some time at Codemasters, nostalgia hit me. And I got back to Bulgaria and I joined Ubisoft. I mean, I was pretty lucky because there aren't that many really good studios like that in Eastern Europe in general.
Okay.
So my first project at Ubisoft was Assassin's Creed Black Flag, which was probably the best title in my career up until that moment. So
no, that's incredible.
So yeah. But since I was doing some lighting artwork at Codemasters, and generally I was specializing a lot in lighting even before I joined Ubisoft, I was actually hired as the lighting artist at Ubisoft, not an environment one.
Oh, right, okay. So that's where it all kind of kicked off.
And it was pretty crazy because that was like maybe 4 months before the end of production on Black Flag, and like 90% of the lighting was suddenly on me, so no pressure there.
Just gave thrown everything.
Yeah. So it was pretty crazy, but it was a lot of fun, and it was definitely a great learning experience as well.
No, that's amazing, because like that's the thing as well. So like that's the cool thing as well when it comes to the podcast that I've realized is like I've slowly realized that I'm beginning to bring on tons of lighting artists, and because lighting is one of the things that it's the thing I respect the most, because I personally think it's like I still really struggle with really understanding how it works and stuff. So hearing and seeing lighting artists work it's incredible. Like what was it that kind of like, was it lighting art that you wanted to go into, or like what was the main thing that got you into 3D? Like, was it environment art at first?
I think at first it was definitely environment art and just modeling in general.
Awesome.
That was the first thing, the first challenge that I met when I started. But very soon, like the moment I hit that render button, I realized how important lighting is.
Yeah.
So I could see when something works, I realized immediately that it was the lighting, but in many cases, things weren't working. So actually, even before I joined Escape Studios, I did this online class at CG Society, which is like CG Workshop, which is, I think now it's CGMA, because they merged at some point.
Yeah, I think it is.
And the workshop was with Jeremy Byrne from Pixar, who's like this veteran lighting artist at Pixar. So I think that was the starting point of my obsession with lighting.
Awesome.
So I never let go of that, even when I was an environment artist later on.
Yeah, because like lighting's, it's like everyone who's listening, it is like the thing. Like every time I've brought on a guest, it's literally the thing that makes or breaks the art, and it's the thing that kind of it drives the story. Like for example, like your recent like the rain environment piece that you made,
Yeah,
like that is so cool. Like and obviously like you not only just captured the concept art, but it's the fact that you added like your own twist, and it's through obviously your skill set as a lighting artist and just an artist in general that just makes that look epic. And
yeah.
like it's like, oh, on you go.
No, I just wanted to say that, yeah, sometimes it's hard to transition, to transfer all this amazing lighting that you get in the concept art into 3D,
Yeah,
and especially real time. But at the same time, for this particular project, I just can't help but give most of the credit to Nikolai, the concept artist,
yeah,
because I followed it too closely, and it was an amazing study for me. But a lot of the work was done for me. That's that's what I'm trying to say.
oh, I completely understand what you mean as well, but then again, it's a skill and a half. Like to be able to, like a lot of people when it comes to the industry, they always say that it's great to be able to have the ability to capture like a concept art's vision,
Yeah,
and then on top of that, to be able to take it even further,
yeah,
it's awesome.
and especially when it's in real time, there's also the challenge of dealing with performance, because all of these really beautiful lights painted in Photoshop look amazing, but when
Yeah,
you place them in Unreal, and although it's an amazing engine, it's when you see the frame rate like go to 10 frames per second, and yeah, that's where the real challenge comes in.
just starts crashing and breaking down.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Right. So as always, man. The main focus, obviously, for the Shootout podcast is student education. So, and the great thing, like you said, so you've come from a computer science background,
Yeah.
but obviously you've also tailored off into Escape Studios. So you've had the education side of things on that side of things.
Hmm.
As always, everyone who's new to the podcast is basically based around the same sort of structure, and I've always liked to kind of keep it this way because it really keeps things fresh and new when it comes to getting everyone's different perspective. And like we're discussing, obviously Ognyan is a lighting artist, so hearing his perspective is something completely fresh, and it's really important when it comes to getting ideas and being inspired, etc. So first question, man. Obviously this
Yeah.
is we'll tailor obviously around you as much as we can. So what do you wish you learned when you were studying? And obviously, since you didn't study university, but maybe is there anything in particular you felt we could even tailor it to lighting art? So in particular, or just anything in general?
Um, well, I think you touched on some of these issues with Tim on the last episode,
Okay.
and I think one of the issues that many of these educational institutions have is that they're sort of lagging behind in
Mm-hmm.
terms of know-how and how adequate what they teach is to the current situation in the industry.
Definitely.
So I think that's a global issue. And I know that I'm generalizing here, so I don't want to offend someone. I know that there are some great universities and academies out there,
Yeah.
but I've also had too much experience with not just me, but other people sharing with me the issues that they had graduating from universities that basically weren't, like I said, completely adequate to what's going on in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
But if I guess even if we put this aside for just a second, I would say that there is a missed opportunity when it comes to teaching students how to be a bit more methodical and disciplined in approaching their work. And
Definitely.
there's like, because if especially when you're dealing with a university, they sort of sit on this gold mine of knowledge from other departments like, I don't know, psychology and
Mm-hmm.
other disciplines like that. And I guess what I'm trying to say is that a lot of people stumble around when let's say they hit on a creative block or something,
Mm-hmm.
and nobody's really teaching people how to deal with that, and maybe how to deal with lack of motivation and inspiration, or how to get out of that block
Yeah.
and so on. And they just focus on the technical stuff, which is something that you can probably get on CGMA anyway, or some place like that.
No, that's an awesome point. God, that's great. I love it when there's fresh ideas that come. No, that's I never thought about that. Gee whiz, it's no, that's a really great example, because when it comes to like you'll know yourself, like every time, like personally, like the main one for me is when like, do you know when you finish a project and
Yeah,
pretty much you're like, well, what do I make next? Or when it comes, well, yeah, I'll go with this one. So when you're like trying to figure out like maybe what to do next or what to be inspired by, but you have nothing to go with, like you're just completely stuck, and
exactly. Yeah.
you get caught in that loop of oh, I'll just maybe go with something that I'm so used to making, and I think that's another thing that's really I guess a challenge for a lot of students, is like obviously like the comfort zone part.
Yeah.
But like you're saying, like if teachers were able to maybe approach workflows in regards to getting people, like I guess just like you're saying, their creativity, like exploring, not being stuck in the same loop all the time, it's so important.
Yeah, and I also don't think that it will take too much time or resources to do that. I mean,
Yeah,
you can literally have like 1 or 2 classes about this per month or something,
yeah.
or maybe just talk about it at the end of the class or something. And I think a lot of people will benefit from that, because I can see many people struggling with these sort of issues.
Do you think it's more of a one-to-one sort of thing that teachers should do, or do you think it's more of a like a group sort of class orientated
Um,
thing? What would you think would probably benefit better?
I think I would go with the group discussion on this one,
Okay.
because I realized that people are unique in many ways, and maybe they'll have a different experience, and they'll get all that knowledge that the teacher shares with them, and they'll try to adapt to it and maybe change it and see what works for them.
Mm-hmm.
But I guess if you go one on one, maybe to become a bit too time consuming and daunting.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
see what you mean, because this is I like to mention this point I'm about to make literally every time I'm on the podcast, because this is the when it comes to just like the reality, but it's like it's so hard for like teachers to keep up with everybody, if you know what I mean,
yeah,
or at least have that constant, I guess, one-on-one experience like you're saying. So no, I
yeah.
completely agree.
And I guess there is also another aspect. When you get into this sort of block and you're too much in your head, I think it's important to realize that you're not the only one who's going through this.
Yeah,
So if you're in a group and the other people are sharing something very similar that's very relatable, maybe it will cheer you up and
yeah,
see that it's not so bad, and it's just temporary.
awesome. So, like, what would you say, like, if it was you personally, say you were back studying, and say maybe you were trying to get out of a creative block, or you were stuck, what helped you kind of, or just maybe now, like, what's helped you kind of help your creativity?
Um, I usually, when I get into that, when I hit that wall, I usually sort of stop and take a step back, and I'll mix things up. I'll do something else. Like
Mm-hmm.
I've heard you talk about this, and I think you touched on that with Tim as well. I'm also into sports a lot,
Oh, nice one.
so that definitely helps me. Or I'll probably go out with friends or just do something different. Because when you get into that mindset, in that block, and you
Mm-hmm.
you basically go into this autopilot mode,
Yeah, definitely.
it hurts the quality of your work, and it's only getting worse. So if you're just trying to power through it, it almost never ends well.
Just out of interest, what sports do you play?
Um, well, I'm just generally fitness stuff, like
Okay.
going to the gym, but
Yeah, nice one.
I'm also really into MMA and martial arts.
Oh, awesome.
Uh, yeah, that really helps me a lot, and
Definitely.
it's a great change of pace, and it takes you to a completely different mindset when you're sparring with someone, or
Like you get completely out of
just
the zone.
yeah, exactly. It's so different from sitting. Although I love my job, I mean, I'm crazy about it, but
Yeah,
it's so nice to make these changes from time to time.
definitely. Like that's cool how you said MMA, because I actually started so I picked up boxing. I think was it a month ago, and So I've always been passionate about just like sometimes you just have to let things out. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah, exactly.
and like even if it's just hitting a bag, sometimes it plays such a huge part in helping you just get everything off your system.
Yeah, absolutely. I can totally relate to that.
No, that's super cool. Yeah, so everyone who's an artist, take up a martial art.
Yeah,
You'll
it's still an art.
it certainly is. It's a skill set and a have to have. No, that's super cool. No, but it's good that you've brought up that because it's such an important aspect, and it gets so cliche, but cliches are normally the most important part, and so many people forget how important just doing sport and getting away from your computer is.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's a wonderful job, but it's also a very sedentary lifestyle,
Yeah,
which is not good for you. And there's so much science behind the fact that it affects your mind, not just your body, and how connected these two are.
yeah,
So yeah, if you're in this sort of block and you feel down or something, it's this will really make a huge change.
yeah. It's like
Yeah,
it's the small things in life.
absolutely, yeah.
Awesome. As always, so like the next one, I always say, well, this is pretty much we can carry on obviously from like the discussions we just had. The next one's always like, what do you wish you learned while studying at college or university, etc. Like if there's anything in particular. Oh wait, sorry, stupid question. I've already asked you that. The next one, you pretty much answered this, but it's like, so did university teach you how to be ready for the industry? But instead, what I can do is since you study computer science, like what did maybe computer science and Escape Studios help you? Maybe.
Um, I uh, I don't think that the university helped me, but considering that I studied computer science, I can't really hold this against them
Okay.
because it wasn't like most of the people studying that weren't preparing to go into the game industry.
Yeah.
So yeah, but I guess that completing like big projects and stuff like that sort of unknowingly prepared me in terms of learning to be more disciplined and knowing when to work hard and when to take a step back and stuff like that. So I would say that Escape Studios played a much more vital role in preparing me for the industry because
Yeah.
the teachers there were like straight out of the industry itself, and like the main teacher worked at Sony, I think, for like over 10 years or so.
Wow. Right.
And the other substitutes were all people from the big VFX houses in London, like MPC, Framestore, and so on.
I'm so jealous.
So yeah, they talk about pipelines that were very adequate in terms of what was going on in the industry at that time, and they would give you feedback on your projects all the time and talk about your portfolio and what you should put in and take out and how you should behave in the interview, and just really extremely valuable stuff that you normally don't really get at many places of education.
Yeah. Like you mentioned like three great topics that we could discuss. Like the first one you said was like obviously like you tackled different projects, and like what's your personal thoughts on when it comes to projects just in general? So like a lot of people obviously maybe have in their head, do I make a big project, a small project, etc. Like what's your kind of like what's the benefits of tackling, I guess, both?
Um, if you're an aspiring artist and you're trying to break into the industry, I would advise you to keep it manageable. Because many people, because of the lack of experience, they get extremely inspired and they love some beautiful, huge level from Uncharted or something,
Mm-hmm.
and they feel confident that they can do it, but like 2 or 3 months later they've only done like 10% of it, and they get discouraged and desperate. And since I've been on the recruitment side
Mm-hmm.
of things, um, I would say that the size of the project doesn't really matter when they're evaluating your portfolio. It's
All right.
it's
Okay.
all about the quality.
Definitely.
And so you can, if you're an environment artist, you can literally have like one or two dioramas and maybe one complete level, which is not too big,
Mm-hmm.
and show that you can do props and texturing and have solid lighting in it. and that's what the lead artists that are looking at the portfolio will be most concerned with. They
Awesome.
don't expect of you to have some level that is like 8 kilometers by
Yeah.
8 kilometers. Yeah.
Just make it a whole game.
Yeah, I mean, it could be, I guess, because things are getting so specialized now in terms of the roles in studios. So if you're, uh, there's a role that is getting pretty popular, which is procedural artists.
Is that wait?
Basically,
That's a role. All right. Okay.
yeah, yeah. It's mostly with Houdini or some similar piece of software,
Right.
or sometimes it's within the engine itself. But that's, I guess, that those are some limited cases when having some huge level where you've set up all these smart materials and you've scattered procedurally a lot of objects and it looks all organic and natural. That's when it would matter.
Yeah.
But I would say that for a general environment art position, just keep it smaller and manageable and make sure that the quality is really high.
Quality's there. No, that's great. Because like another one you said there is you tackle. So for example, you said dioramas, and for example, when I was in university, there was only there's one person in my class. He now works at Ubisoft in Newcastle in England. His
Yeah.
name's Kevin, and he tackled. I keep mentioning Kevin because Kevin, I think, was made the smartest decisions when it came to, for example, being an environment artist and making sure he was ready for the industry when he finished uni. If you know what I mean, like he put himself in the best spot because
Yeah.
what he did, I think you'll agree with me. So what he did is so he did a diorama project, and then he also did what's the word called? Do you know when you make assets that can be used multiple times? What's
Like a modular
modular?
environment.
That's
Okay.
that's the one. And I think those two types of things are very like smart moves. I think I'm not sure what your thoughts are on that
Yeah, absolutely. That was a great call from your friend.
because
And like I said, you don't need a huge portfolio with numerous projects in it. You just need to be smart about it and show that you can bring that triple A quality.
awesome. And then like you said as well, like the scale one, like the scale one for me, like that's my kind of biggest weakness. So I'm obsessed with like every project I make, I just like to make it. It's so cliche, but or cringy, but it's like the more epic, the better to me personally. So like my current project, like like my last project was a train project, but now the project that I'm making now is like 10 times as big as my train project. And I'm like, it's gonna take
Well,
me like a year and a half to make, no joke.
I think that actually many artists can relate to that, and that's
Yeah,
it's not a bad thing. It's great that you're inspired by all these ideas.
definitely.
So as long as you do it in a smart way, I think it's still achievable. Just make sure that it is achievable. Don't
Yeah,
just jump into the deep without a plan. That's all I'm trying to say.
definitely. Because like my favorite piece of yours, like you know I'm gonna say it, but it's the Harry Potter piece. Like
Yeah.
when I saw your Harry Potter piece, I was like, this guy is a legend. I have to see this guy's work from now on every single day. Like I was, you know me, I'm obsessed with Harry Potter. Everyone who's listening is like, this guy doesn't shut up about Harry Potter. But like, we could, if you're okay, could we talk about the Harry Potter piece? That would be pretty cool to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely.
So like,
Uh,
what made you want to make the Harry Potter piece?
well, I'm sort of a big fan too. I mean,
Awesome.
I wouldn't say that I'm obsessed.
All right. Okay.
But yeah, I got hooked a while ago, and for a pretty weird reason. Because at first, when I heard, because it became a phenomenon, like
Hmm.
really very quickly, and at the first I thought it's some sort of child book, like just for kids.
Okay.
I was pretty ignorant about it, and then my sister got hooked on it, and then a lot of my friends got hooked on it, and I was wondering what's going on, and then I heard that in the fourth book there's this sort of important secondary character who is Bulgarian,
Yeah.
and I got even more curious about Victor Krum, and
Victor
then
Crumb.
Bulgaria was in the Quidditch final, and
Yeah.
yeah, so I looked into it, and then I got hooked immediately. No,
Nah.
not because of Bulgaria, but just because it's such a great universe.
Yeah. Like it's the world that makes it what it is because it's also so relatable.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
It's like a fantasy high school.
definitely. Oh, if only, like I said to you before, you know what my major secret is, or my career goal is.
Yeah.
Don't tell anyone. But
No.
no, like when it comes to Harry Potter, like I could talk to about for ages. But the reason why I brought it up is that like these personal projects are so important, and like when it comes to making art piece, obviously, like Ognyan's saying there, like he got hooked on it, and it's finding a piece to you that's not only inspirational or that's going to inspire you, but something that you're actually going to finish. And
Yeah,
finishing an art piece, it's so crucial.
absolutely. And actually, funnily enough, it when I started it, it started as I was going to make a hybrid between the Dumbledore's office and the steampunk environment.
Oh right, really, right, okay.
Yeah, that's why I had that weird octopus at the top.
Yeah, no, that's the
uh,
cool part.
but at some point, I realized that the original office, is so awesome that I thought that I'll just stick to it as close as I can. I
Yeah,
mean, I made some changes because I didn't want to just plagiarize it and copy it.
yeah.
But yeah, that's how the whole thing started.
No, that's cool. No, but like, what you said there, that's another main point. Is when it comes to making art pieces, it's like finding like that extra touch to make it your own.
Oh yeah,
Like how to like light it, etc. Like you just said there about the octopus part. Like the really cool thing. I would love to learn how you did it, but it's like the cobwebs.
yeah.
Like when you added all that, I have no idea how you do that.
They're just little pieces of geometry modeled by hand, basically.
All
Just
right, okay.
very simple geometry, and they have this translucent material on top. And then there's this node in Unreal in the material editor
Yeah.
called Quick Grass or something, which
Okay.
basically makes it sway based on vertex color.
Right. Gee
So
whiz.
it's really like old school technique, but it does the job.
Oh no, trust me, it did. Like it works perfectly. It's those small touches that you add to an art piece that just makes it like the story and adds the mood as
Yeah,
well.
yeah, it's so powerful because you can not only tell the story of the environment, but you can also tell the story of the characters that
Yeah.
occupy the environment, like how well they took care of all these furniture and
Hmm.
all these little trinkets around. So it's extremely powerful, and I love when I get to that stage where I get to add little touches like this.
Like when it comes to like obviously we can like talk about lighting and stuff. So like when it comes to lighting, like for example, any students listening who's obviously wanting to get more inspired by lighting, like what's your like is there any advice when it comes to I guess creating story that you've realized through just years of practice? Like what's the best tips maybe that could help lighting artists get better when it comes to maybe creating a story?
Um, I would say that to keep all the focal points around places in the environment that are important, like with hero assets or that are important to in terms of gameplay.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you're applying not even just as a lighting artist, but as an environment artist, if you light your environment properly and show that you try to also think about the player, not just the composition, the artistic aspect of it,
Right.
like this would really impress potential recruiters because they really look for that in an art piece. And yeah, just focus the attention of the viewer or the player around points in the environment that
Mm-hmm.
are really polished or that really matter for the story or for the gameplay.
Cool. Awesome. So would you say there's any common mistakes when it comes to lighting that you've noticed really in a lot of students?
Um, I've noticed that many times they sort of try to light everything, almost like it's almost like they've done all this like modeling and texturing work, and they
Mm-hmm.
feel bad if some of it is not visible.
Yeah. Oh, I see
so
what you mean.
so you get this final result that reads like something pretty flat,
Yeah.
and it tends to get either really boring or really noisy,
Yeah.
and you don't know where to look at. And I guess you need to learn, like I said, to focus the viewer's attention at where you really want it,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
to let go of all these details that will maybe remain in the shadows. That's something really common that I've seen from students, even students that have asked me for feedback, and maybe I see it in like 70% of their work.
Gee, yeah. No, no, that's a great one because I'm always honest with my own artwork. Like I'll admit, like I'm a culprit of that myself, or I'm still learning. I think I think developed a good eye in the sense that like I know what I need to achieve, but I just don't know. Like I don't have the skill set yet. If you know what I mean. Like
Yeah,
I can't visualize a lot of things. Well, I can see what I'm trying to achieve, but I don't know yet how to achieve it. And like you said, a few important words there that were really crucial in my art piece. So my train piece, for example, was very noisy. But I think it's not only in the sense that so I don't know if it was the rendering, but it's like maybe I didn't leave the render on long enough. But like, do you know, like sometimes if you don't leave the render till completion, it doesn't make it as clean.
yeah,
But I also realized that like I kind of had that habit as well of obviously wanting to make sure everything was seen, but I always did focus on composition, like that was crucial, and making sure like you said there was a focal point. However, the to fix the solution of when people are like trying to show off everything, the one thing that I decided to do was literally just have like one clay render,
yeah,
and it's very common in every a lot of portfolios. But people just do it if you're really keen on like modeling etc. Get like a really nice clay render on the go. Like for example, I used V-Ray for my train piece, and my main focus was right. I love modeling, so what was I going to do? I was going to make sure I had one image. Obviously, it still had the lights and that, but it had no textures in that, and it was just focused on the area that I valued the most. If that makes sense.
hmm
So like that was like my kind of well, that's my kind of advice on that sort of thing.
yeah, yeah. It's definitely a good point. And when you mentioned clay render, I actually remembered something that I wanted to mention is that um, a good way to build these habits in terms of avoiding the student mistakes that I mentioned early on
Mm-hmm.
is to light environments that are basically just mid-gray material, no textures, no complex material setups,
Okay.
and that's first of all it's extremely fast because lighting is baked much faster if you're baking like in Unreal or something.
Mm-hmm.
And it's also an amazing exercise, and something that many people don't realize up until the moment they apply to studios is that many times the art test that they're going to get to complete as part of their application is exactly a material like that, an environment like that,
Mm-hmm.
meaning you'll be asked to light a scene without any textures or complex materials in it. So it's just basically gray materials, maybe a couple of emissive ones on light sources, and just lighting. Just that's the whole test.
Yeah.
So it would be really cool for if students practice that. I mean, it's awesome that I see a lot of relighting scenes that they got from Marketplace, which is amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
Yeah, keep doing that. That's awesome as an exercise. But also try to do that without, like I said, all the textures and materials as well. It's an amazing exercise, and you will have to face that in some studios, some of the major ones actually,
Mm-hmm.
when you do your art test.
No, like that's so crucial because like um everyone always like it's I know everyone has this sort of like I'm not sure what you call it. But it's like sort of not pride, but sort of like is it possession? Possession? What's the word? It's like you know when you want to make things just like I want to make everything 100% mine. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And
yeah, I know.
it's like it's not a go to like for example like you even mentioned when you were doing the what's it called so like the rain environment like so you utilize a wee bit of props from like I think it was like was it Unreal you used maybe like you used like other props from something
Um,
as well just to help story as well.
yeah, I got a couple of mega scans and a couple of props from just other maps, the free ones.
Definitely. And
Yeah,
like those are so important like it doesn't have to like you don't have to like make everything to get
no,
across like the story.
No, absolutely not. I mean, because I've textured and modeled like 95% of that environment, so
Yeah,
I've already proved that I can do it. And
definitely.
the whole goal of the project wasn't to prove that I can model just another proper and texture it later on.
Yeah.
So it was the overall impact of the whole project was much more important for me.
And like everyone who's listening, like listen to that, like that main point that he just made there. Like you have to understand like what your goal is, and what are the recruiters, like what are the artists at these studios looking for, what impresses them. Because like obviously, like if you're applying for like a lighting position, they're not gonna necessarily going to be like, oh, that's an epic model you've got there.
Yeah.
Like if it's not lit well, then you've defeated the purpose of your application.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. I mean, nobody's going to tell you, oh, your lighting is amazing, but did you model that light bulb over there in the corner? Like
Yeah,
nobody cares.
like
Like
why?
no, it's all about the color theory, composition, and that's what they're looking for.
Exactly.
And they also want to see that you've done it in a smart way. So if you can also share maybe a breakdown of your light setup, that's cool because they'll know that everything is done according to the current performance limitations.
Mm-hmm. Because and like yeah, like you're saying, like all up to date, up to like industry standard, etc.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Like it'd be great if like this is what's obviously like you said earlier, it's a common trend when it comes to the podcast, or like every guest that I've had on, it's making sure that industry is no student education is up to date with the standards of like what's required, etc. But
Yeah.
there's like for example, you mentioned one word there that I personally believe like so many people who are listening probably are still behind. Like I don't be offended if I'm wrong, but it's like when people mention the word mega scans, or like certain lighting methods and stuff. It's like there's certain words that are still not being introduced at universities and colleges, and like I understand it's hard to maybe for a teacher to be constantly up to date, but when it comes to students who are paying thousands of money to go to a degree and they're getting taught things that are like 5 years behind, it really like it digs a hole.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I agree 100% with everything that you said.
Yeah.
Especially, you mentioned the money part, and I think that's maybe not such a big issue in here in Europe.
Okay.
But in North America, the numbers that I hear and the type of student loans that people graduate with, to me, that's I can't even contemplate it. Like
Yeah.
graduating with like over $100,000 of debt,
Like
that's insane.
like oh
I mean, education in Europe. I mean, not just in. Obviously, I'm from Bulgaria, but
yeah.
I have like friends everywhere. I've lived abroad. I've traveled, and education in Europe seems much more accessible, and I don't see university collapsing because of that.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess something needs to be done about this in places like that, and I definitely don't advise people to, unless they have really solid feedback about the place and they know that it's everything is up to date and they'll get this amazing education. I would never graduate from a place that will leave me with such debt.
Yeah. Like that's the thing. It's like I just don't get where they get the numbers from. Where does it come in the mindset of to charge someone 100 grand, or like for example, a few numbers I've been told is like 40 grand a year, and I'm like 40 grand, like 40 grand a year. That's insane. Like
Yeah.
I know that's in like it's mainly in America. So everyone who's listening in America, I feel I understand where you guys are coming from, but I don't know. It's just like personally, like you'll agree yourself. It's just not realistic. It's like
No, definitely.
if you can get away with like the self learning route, like I would go with that. Like personally, like this is a bold statement for me to say, but personally, if you're in America or just anywhere that's really charging such insane fees, I would try your best to go the self taught route.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I mean, I don't know what are the taxes in places like, let's say, Gnomon, but I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure that it should be much cheaper than that.
Yeah,
And also, it takes less time. I think that they have like 2 or 3 semesters or something.
yeah,
So I can't imagine going out of school and then you're under all this pressure to get a job,
Hmm.
and you won't get a job at an intermediate or senior level, obviously, because you don't have experience. So with all that stress hanging over you all the time, you're also guaranteed to maybe make a mistake in your choice,
Hmm.
because you'll be forced to. You basically can't wait because you have to start paying that debt, and
Yep.
maybe you jump at the first opportunity that's given to you,
Hmm.
and maybe it won't be the right one. So yeah, like you said, I would definitely, if I live in a place that's set up like this, I will definitely look for another avenue, like
Yeah.
Gnomon or online courses, or and also these places guarantee you that the teachers will be really up to date in terms of what's going on, because from what I've seen at Gnomon, they all work like at Naughty Dog or Sony Santa Monica and
Yeah.
places like that, like the best of the best. And
Well, that's like
yeah,
yeah.
I think it's the perfect way to set up a school for this industry, like
Hmm.
the Gnomon formula. They're actually trying to set up something similar here in Bulgaria.
Oh, really? Right.
There's
Okay. Nice one.
Yeah, there's this guy. His name is Anthony Christoph.
Okay.
He he moved to the US like 30 years ago, and he was art director at Pixar for 20 years.
Oh, wow. Right. Okay.
And he came back here, and now he's starting a very similar academy. And from what I'm reading, he basically got all the local studios to support him and to be part of the education, which is awesome because you get people from like Ubisoft, Gameloft, Creative Assembly, and even Chaos Group, the developers of V-Ray.
Oh, oh, nice one. Yeah.
Yeah, so it's formulas like that and Gnomon that will guarantee you that the people that teach you on a daily basis, they really know what they're talking about, because they're working on the next Uncharted or the next Assassin's Creed or whatever.
Yeah.
Pick a title, yeah.
Like that's the crazy thing as well. But it's like you said something there that's oh, that'd be awesome. You just made me think of so many ideas. So you said obviously obviously he's gone to Bulgaria and he's reached out to different places.
Yeah.
It'd be great. Like I understand that a lot of places are actually doing this. Like for example, my university that I went to, it did this when I was there, and they continue to do it. But I
Hmm.
highly recommend. I wish more places kept maybe reaching out to these bigger studios and maybe having not just necessarily guest speakers. Like obviously that's a common one. Like everyone always likes to maybe bring a guest speaker. For example, say I was at Alberta, I'd be like, right, Ognyan, come and do a presentation and teach us about lighting and stuff. Which would be epic and that'd be great. It'd be awesome to see you down at Alberta. But um, but like that's beneficial, but it's the part that when it comes to like the industry we're trying to get into, it's getting a more kind of hands-on sort of actual art thing, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
So like,
that
oh sorry.
that's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Because they're not just going to get artists from these places too. That's also extremely important, because
Mhm.
they'll get level designers and game designers and probably even technical artists and programmers.
Yeah.
So the thing is that working at those big places means that you have to work in complete harmony with all these other departments and
Yep.
learn to think about all these other aspects of what you're doing. And when you're being taught by people who do this on a daily basis and who collaborate among themselves, that's just so valuable.
Mhm. So obviously, so the next question, this literally carries on from this. So, what's your thoughts on, like obviously, like there's the benefits of going to university and stuff, but like,
Hmm.
so the cliche one is obviously, which is it's the important one. It's obviously the networking side of things and making friends, etc. But
Yeah.
is there anything that, through your studies that maybe outside of just like the usual making friends, is there anything else that you found that's been rewarding? Like for example, when you're doing maybe computer science, I know it's a bit maybe harder to answer, but were you able to maybe gain anything else that was a benefit?
Um, I wouldn't say that I got that much from the computer science.
Okay.
I guess what it gave me is that I'm less scared of technical stuff
Mhm.
as an artist. So because I had to go through all this programming and advanced math and stuff like that.
Okay.
And like I know that many artists cringe at uh, some technical stuff. I mean, many
Yeah.
people out there enjoy it, but
Yeah.
I know for a fact that there are many who really hate it.
Yeah, they're not so keen.
So yeah, I guess that's one thing that I got from there.
Awesome.
But yeah, I can't think of anything else
No,
really.
that's all right. There's no pressure to come up with anything else because
Yeah,
obviously like the more podcasts I do, the more obvious certain answers just everyone kind of says the same thing if you know what I mean eventually, and but the great thing about that though, like the more times people say it, the more times it actually drills into the viewer listening in, if that makes sense, and
yeah, totally.
they begin actually right, okay, Ognyan's saying network, Tim's saying network, all these people are saying network, then you're gonna have to network.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. It's really important. I mean, I did more networking at Escape and later on at my first job after that at
mhm,
Codemasters.
mhm,
And now I have friends from these places from like all over the world, friends at Naughty Dog or Sony or whatever. So that's really important to have these contacts. But this comes with time, and
mhm.
it's easier to build them when you spend more time with these people compared to, let's say, a conference or a place like that.
Yeah, because like you need to talk to people. You need to like I know it's a common trend, and I keep saying it when it comes to the podcast, but it's like if you are shy, and there's nothing wrong with being shy. Everyone has different just different ways of life and stuff, but
Yeah,
if you can conquer that, maybe that fear of just maybe reaching out to an artist, for example, like I say all the time, I ask questions all the time. Um, like I'm very grateful for example, I was like, Ognyan, maybe could you give me a wee bit of feedback? And I was really fortunate that he got back to me, and it's through asking different artists different questions. Doesn't like at the end of the day, we're all people. It's like just because it says a title in front of their name doesn't mean they're going to be like super scary or stuff. You know what I mean? It's
yeah.
like they're not going to be like, oh my gosh, how dare you ask me a question? I'm higher ranked than you. It doesn't work like that.
No, not at all. I'm actually happy to help. Like my inbox at ArtStation and LinkedIn is full of people who ask me questions, and I don't think that I've ever declined. I
Yeah,
always try to. I mean, obviously, I'm limited by the time that I can spend on my answers and my feedback, but I always
obviously.
try to be as useful as possible. And I think that applies to like 99% of the people in the industry. So
Yeah,
definitely don't be scared to ask questions. Don't be embarrassed. There are no wrong questions.
yeah.
So yeah, by all means, ask for feedback.
Just keep asking away, and then
Yeah,
the other one is like as well. Like to me, like for example, a lot of people when it comes to like the best sort of tip when it comes to growing your network. This is well, some people might. It depends how what you think on this, but it's like so the best thing for me in terms of developing a network is actually helping people. Obviously, we've just literally just touched on it, but it's like, for example, there's a lot of great podcasts out there. Like a lot of people would be like, Ross, would you share these podcast artwork because obviously you make a podcast? And I'm like, I'm not that type of person. I'm not going to compete with these other people. I'm going to help them. If you know what I mean. And
yeah,
the more you start sharing other artists' work, and get involved with helping other people, that's then inevitably grows you in terms of a network, making just signs that you're a nice person, that you're helping out, and the most important thing of all, teamwork.
absolutely. Like that what you said there is extremely important, and it's a very healthy attitude.
Yeah,
Like don't shy away from that, and especially don't be jealous of other people. On the contrary,
definitely.
like I'm so inspired by other artists. I would always like and comment stuff, and that's such a it's a much more healthier attitude than to basically be jealous and envious. And yeah,
Exactly.
please don't do that.
And just to make sure, just a reminder as everyone. So all 1,600 of you right now, go spam Ognyan's art station and everything. I almost forgot. Make sure to go give him a follow. I'll literally show it on the screen right now. So pause. So stop listening to us for 2 seconds and just spam his follow and likes. Go see his work, share his work, you name it. Go give him a follow, etc. And make the most of it.
Thanks, man.
Right, now back to the podcast. Where were we? Right, okay. So, carrying on with this subject, obviously the main one is like uni versus online courses,
Yeah.
and there's like they're both great. They have their benefits. So obviously in your case, I've got a hunch you're going to be very online courses orientated, maybe. But what's your thoughts on online courses?
Um, I think they are great, and the quality in the recent years is just amazing. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, you get to be taught by literally the top artists in the industry, and you also get feedback on your work, and you know that maybe like an hour before that person gave you a feedback, he was working on I don't know, The Last of Us 2, like.
Yeah,
So you can't really get this at most universities, unfortunately.
yeah,
So yeah, I'm definitely very positive when
very,
it comes to online courses.
very sort of like I think it's like I personally think so. They both have like a place in the sense that like both university has a voice. Like I loved university and I'm all for it. However, I also know that when I was at university as well, like so I have full respect for everyone who taught me. Like they really worked hard to teach me as much as possible. But I also realized that you have to do a lot of self learning. Like self learning is crucial, and
Yeah.
like I'm pretty sure you know for yourself, like obviously, like you would have had to grind really hard to like, and work smart on your own to get where you are.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And when it comes to university, I think one if they have they definitely have advantages, and I guess one of them is time as a resources because
Yeah.
it generally it takes longer to graduate from university,
Mhm.
and not everyone at 18 or like 20 knows exactly where they're going in their career and what they want.
Mhm.
And usually these like online courses or academies like Doman, they're a bit more focused. So I guess that if you're at uni, you get the benefit of trying different things and figuring out what you really love, and that's definitely one point for the universities.
No, that's great. Like, oh, that's cool. So the fact that you mentioned time there, like time, like this is an interesting one because time for so I learned to master patience pretty early on growing up. So I've always been quite a patient person, but I'm also a very like I'm very competitive in the sense that it's like I know what I want in life, and I've always known like I always make sure to find a way to get it, and no matter what, just keep chasing the passion, chasing the dream, etc. However, I always knew that I could trust in time, and a lot of artists I think have to kind of step back and kind of stop thinking about, oh, maybe I have to get to this studio as soon as possible, or like a common one. I'm not sure if you see it quite a lot, but it's like people always say that, oh, if I'm over a certain age, it's harder to get in. I personally disagree with that.
Yeah, that's like I said, I've been on the other side of that recruitment process, and I can tell you that 99% of the time that's simply not true.
Yeah,
Like nobody cares. It's all about quality.
because it's not like,
Like
oh, on you go.
nobody.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. Like nobody is ageist about it. They just want someone who will get the job done.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
imagine you're going to a job when you're like 18. They're like, it's okay. You've still got the skills.
Yeah, that might be a bit awkward, but
Just walking in with your walking stick, like I'm here to craft. That'll be awesome.
yeah. But
Uh,
yeah, time as a resource, it's extremely important, and it
yeah.
doesn't stop being important even after you complete your education. Just managing your time, whether you're at work completing a task or after work hours and you're working on personal stuff, it's extremely important, and you need to. That's why I mentioned, like at the beginning of the podcast, I was talking about learning discipline and motivation
Hmm.
at this early stage, because sometimes you get into these bad habits and it gets harder and harder to unlearn bad stuff with age.
Definitely. What's your thoughts on like speaking like carrying on the idea of time? So like for example, like I have no idea how the system works when it comes to recruiting, but do you know when like for example say um like so this is what I did at one point. So I posted a work in progress of an art piece. So say I posted it in June.
Hmm.
or no, in January, and then I posted the finished train piece. Like, say, I keep talking about the train piece because it's the latest piece. So sorry, folks, if you're getting fed up with it. But and say I finish it in June. How how important does that time highlighted on ArtStation, does that make a difference? Like how long it took, or like when people say, or when they see how long it's
Um,
taken, does that make a difference?
no, not really, because um, I'm actually going on that note. I'm going to touch on something else in a minute, but
Okay, awesome.
like nobody really cares about that because basically nobody has any idea what we have been up to in that time.
Hmm.
Like people realize that maybe you had classes or have another full-time job, or basically nobody knows what's going on in your life, so
Yeah,
nobody is going to judge you on that.
awesome.
And on that note, I'm a big fan of not being too anal about the amount of time that studios give to applicants when it comes to completing art tests,
Okay.
because many studios have these deadlines that are like in maybe 4 days after the initial contact or something like that. And to me, that's completely pointless. I think you should give them more time because, first of all, like I said, you have no idea how much time they're actually going to spend on that because
Hmm.
they're probably working in order to pay bills, and maybe they are in another job in the industry. And the truth is that whether it takes them like 4 days or 10 days, they're not going to become better at their job in those extra 6 days.
Yeah,
That's the point I'm trying to make. Because in the end of the day, to me, it's all about the quality. Because if you show that you can get the job done, that's all that matters. I mean, if you have that knowledge, obviously you know how to do it in time when you're in a studio environment.
yeah. Like one of the things that I've realized that, well, I think everyone realizes it, no matter what industry is, like one of the most important things is trust. Um,
Yeah.
because of you struggle, like say for example you have done an art test or something, and
Hmm.
maybe like the feedback you've got is like maybe it's okay, like maybe it's constructive and it's worded not too bad, but like say for example when they get like say if they get the job, etc., and they start and stuff, and you've instantly kind of put them into some pressure, or like you don't show a wee bit of trust, it makes just the whole process just way more difficult.
Yeah, I agree with that, but the thing is that this is on the person who hired you,
Yeah,
because usually when they give you that responsibility of recruitment, it comes with consequences. When you hire people, you have to basically uh, prove that this is the right person in front of HR or
yeah, that's true.
other leads. So if you immediately start judging that people and putting them down and putting them under pressure, that's on you, and you basically you're probably not an okay person,
Yeah,
or you just didn't do your job properly.
yeah. Like that's why when it comes to like what I said earlier on about like it shouldn't, like nothing should ever be about like a title. Like I understand that many people work, like I have so much respect for these people who like obviously they've worked so hard to get up the ladder, like
Yeah,
like the common phrase is like the food chain, etc. But it shouldn't. I don't like necessarily calling them that, because the best quote I've ever seen of all time, and I've mentioned it I think once on the podcast, but it was from Steve Jobs, and Steve Jobs basically said, like you don't hire better talented people, like more talented people to ask them questions, like no, like to tell them what to do. You hire them to tell you what to do. If
yeah,
if you
that's very true. Yeah.
if you know what I mean.
Uh, Yeah, I've seen that quote, and it's very relatable. And also, when you mention titles, I think that like the best of the best in the industry, just generally most of the people who get to these higher positions don't get there because they're obsessed with the title.
Yeah,
They're just passionate about the job, and then the title comes with that.
exactly.
And yeah,
And it's, yeah, no, that's awesome. Thank you so much for all this. This has been great. I'm loving this.
thanks.
So I'm learning a tremendous amount, and yeah. So we've covered so many different awesome topics. So we've covered, for example, the benefits of going to university. We've really gone into depth about Ognyan's journey, etc. Is there anything particular that maybe you want to bring up that just out of the whim? Like, is there anything that comes to mind that maybe you'd like to bring up at all?
Maybe when people are preparing to apply, make sure that you really know the place you're applying at, like
Mm-hmm.
in terms of their past, maybe what they're working on at the moment, and so on. Like play their games, or if you're in the VFX industry, watch their movies or whatever. But don't go into an interview unprepared, because that's an immediate red flag for the recruiters.
Yeah.
If that person didn't put in the time to research what he's applying for, and how motivated is that person to get that job, and why is he even here,
Yeah.
or he or she. But yeah, that's extremely important.
No, awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on, man. It's been a
No,
pleasure to have you on.
no, it was my pleasure, man. It was awesome, and I'm really, like I said, I'm really glad that the podcast is getting more and more popular, and it's so valuable for people who are looking for all this advice.
Thank you so much. Yeah, everyone who's listening, once again, if you've not seen Ognyan's work, as always on the podcast, I showcase it on the back. Is there any particular sort of social medias that you use? I know you use Twitter. Do you use Instagram?
Not that much.
All right, okay.
Maybe just ArtStation and Twitter.
ArtStation and Twitter. So
Yeah,
everyone who's listening, make sure to go give him a follow and check out his work. Like you said, incredible artist. He's made so many awesome games, and just make sure to keep up to date with him.
thanks a lot, man.
Anytime. Thank you. It means a lot. If you're new to the podcast, once again, don't forget to subscribe. Obviously, it's much appreciated if you like the video. It's okay to dislike as well. If you think maybe there's anything that you think I could improve on, or there's any questions that you want me to ask or get answered for you, fire away in the comments section below. Because at the end of the day, the main reason for this podcast is to help you guys, the students, the artists, whatever age you are, it doesn't matter. And like I said, if you want to get in touch with me personally, if there's any particular questions, the best thing for me personally is LinkedIn, because I think it just, because if you ask a very personal question on the comment section, I'm not sure if you want to go have a full discussion on the comment section. It's not the greatest place to be when it comes to certain topics. So just make sure to just fire a question anytime. But yeah, once again, subscribe. That'll be much appreciated. And last reminder, we've got 5 podcasts this week. So, oh my goodness, it's going to be an interesting journey, I'll tell you that. So
Good luck.
Oh, I know, good luck. I will hopefully prevail. But
Yeah, I'm sure you will.
till next time, guys, we will see you in the next video. Bye for now.
Bye.